Hello everyone, I'm Greg Weaver. Welcome to The Audio Analyst. Coincident with the announcement last week that I will begin to explore new areas that include a mix of more affordable installations, including pure vintage audio systems, some more affordable newer systems, and some hybrids of both. Today's episode will explore the installation of subwoofers, in particular stereo subwoofers, and ways to successfully implement them even with older vintage electronics and in non-dedicated listening spaces. Now, one of my best audio pals, Randy, has spent many a Friday or Saturday evening in my listening room over the past 7 years or so, and I've been an undoubtedly bad influence on him. When we first met, he had a well-maintained vintage system, including a direct drive turntable with a moving magnet cartridge, an AM/FM stereo receiver, and bookshelf speakers, all from the early 1980s, to which he had added a CD changer in the 2000s. Now, after spending some time listening to my world-class rig here, his music and audio bugs were seriously reignited. First, he replaced his decades-old Bose 301 Mark IIs that had occupied space on the large entertainment center in his living room with an overachieving pair of Andrew Jones-designed Elac Uni-Fi UB5 bookshelves, adding a set of Target FS70 28-inch stands that sold for $290 in the spring of 2018. Next, the following spring, came the addition of a Martin Logan Dynamo 1100X powered subwoofer. Now, the 1100X features a 12-inch inverted surround polycone driver in a sealed, non-resonant cabinet with 1,300 watts of peak amplifier power, which uses an app-based control and Anthem room correction. He then upgraded his Elac UB5s to the Elac Uni-Fi Reference UBR62 monitors in the spring of 2022. And just last week, with the desire to move to a stereo subwoofer arrangement, he added the second Martin Logan Dynamo 1100X powered subwoofer. Randy's system now consists of a vintage mid to late 1970s Kenwood KR-9600 receiver. It sold new for $800, and Randy scored this beauty on eBay for an even grand in 2018. He took it to Stereo Rehab in Chicago for a refresh at an additional cost of about $400. Now, his primary source is a direct drive Technics SLD 202 turntable, which he purchased new in 1981 for about $180. And he recently upgraded to an Ortofon 2M bronze with its excellent nude fine line 8x40 micron stylus for another $420. Now, as mentioned, his speakers are the remarkable Andrew Jones designed $1,200 a pair Elac Uni-Fi Reference UBR62 monitors, augmented now with a stereo pair of the Martin Logan Dynamo 1100X powered subwoofers. Now, the first one was about $1,300 when he purchased it 4 years ago, and with the recent addition of the second one, the price had risen to $1,500. Now, he also has an Onkyo DX C390 6-disc CD changer that he paid $160 for when he bought it, but Randy is a pretty hardcore LP cat, much like me. Now, to be complete, all of his miscellaneous cabling, speaker wires, and other connections set him back just about $350. So his entire system comes in at just about $6,800. Now, all of this gear is set up in his 20-foot 7-inch long by 13-foot 7-inch wide living room, taking advantage of a large and sturdy entertainment system he bought used some time back. And because it is a dual-use room, Randy's centralized listening seat may be easily moved out of its critical listening position to a more typical location along the outside wall, quickly allowing the room to be reset into a conversation and entertaining-friendly space. Now, while there are many subwoofer solutions out there, the choice to use the Martin Logan Dynamo series was made as it offered a very logical, sophisticated, and practical solution. Now, while you clearly don't want a subwoofer, or any loudspeaker for that matter, loaded in a corner, given the space restrictions imposed by this location as a practical living space in his home, Randy needed subs that could be remotely managed from the listening chair and could offer active room correction. Now, we did all that we could physically, including making sure that the subs were not placed at any equal distances to any given room boundary, before turning to the Martin Logan Anthem software to actively nullify the troublesome interactions with these proximate walls of the living room corners. Now, with Martin Logan's Subwoofer Control app for Android or iOS devices, we have a Bluetooth connection to each of the two subs, left and right discreetly, that offer 3 modes: movie, music, and night. Now, the app offers volume control, including the discrete management of the 20 to 30 hertz range, where problematic room gain-driven peaks and dips of different amplitudes may develop. Control the low-pass filter frequency and slope, and control polarity and phase from 0 to 180 degrees, variable in single-degree increments. Now, implementing the integral Anthem room correction software, we were able to sample the sonics in his room by running and recording an audio sweep at 5 different specified locations around the room. Now, these measurements may be made using either the internal microphone of the mobile device or by plugging in an optional calibrated microphone for more precise results. Now, either way, when done, the collected samples are uploaded to their servers for analysis, and when that evaluation is finished, it downloads and implements corrections that produce the most seamless and corrected integration with your room. Now, guys, this is pretty powerful stuff and is in large part why Randy and I settled on using these subwoofers for his installation. Now, I'm betting that the majority of vintage audio gear users out there may be unsure of how, or even unaware that it may be possible, to integrate a subwoofer or subwoofers into their older systems built around legacy amplifiers, preamplifiers, integrated amplifiers, or receivers. Now, as such, while the Martin Logans, and most other subwoofers available today, offer speaker-level inputs, you would typically try to use line-level connectivity if your vintage gear permits. But first, by speaker-level inputs, I'm simply referring to those subwoofers that use speaker-level input capability. Now, in these cases, you route your speaker cables from your amplifier to your subwoofer's provided speaker inputs. Then, you route a separate set of speaker cables from the corresponding output terminals of your subwoofer to your speaker inputs. The subwoofer's internal crossover will use a low-pass filter, allowing it to handle only the bass frequencies. And the better subwoofers will employ a high-pass filter to send only the frequencies above those that the subwoofer needs on to the main loudspeakers. Now, this additional filtration not only allows the subwoofers to more fully and accurately augment the lowest frequencies in the music, ones that your full-range speakers may not be able to accurately regenerate anyway, but it also allows for added clarity, focus, and definition to them as well. Such improvements are realized because your main speakers are no longer being presented with and trying to play those lowest frequencies. By freeing up your main speakers to play only the frequencies above those that the subwoofer or subwoofers are now handling, you are saving them the wasted energy and added distortions with which they would otherwise struggle to reproduce. You may now begin to realize that adding a subwoofer not only reinforces bass speed, impact, and extension, but it also allows you to clean up the accuracy and detail of your main loudspeakers as well, making this a clear win-win solution. Now, given the types of installations we are considering here, I'm not going to focus on the disadvantages one can expect to encounter when implementing subwoofers. Concerns like the introduction of phase and frequency abnormalities. And while it's true that these issues do exist, and can be detrimental in some cases. In my experience, they are far outweighed by the benefits, especially when you factor in the advantages leveraged by using smart software to mitigate them. And while it is true enough that some lesser designed subs that offer speaker level inputs do not offer a high pass output, this is just another reason to choose a sub that offers the line level input option whenever possible. Such an option will clearly be available with separates, but is not always available when using integrateds or receivers. Now, we were lucky in that Randy's vintage Kenwood KR-9600 used jumpers to connect the left and right pre-outs and power ins, readily accessible from its rear panel. Now, this allowed me to install two AudioQuest 1 female to 2 male audio Y adapters between both left and right pre-out jacks to the left and right power in jacks. I then used two 3-meter SVS SoundPath mono RCA subwoofer cables, one from the left Y adapter to go to the left subwoofer's line input, and the other from the right Y adapter to go to the right subwoofer's line input. Our next step was to measure everything to make sure the speakers, subwoofers, and the listening chair were as symmetrically positioned within the room as we were able to make them. And this was quickly and accurately accomplished using the affordable Bosch GLM20 laser measuring tool that I first recommended back in episode 23, Speaker Setup Basics. From there, it was just a matter of dialing everything in using the Martin Logan and Anthem applications. But let's take a look at Randy's current real-world living space setup while he shares a little about his experience moving from a single sub to a stereo pair. Here he is.
So, it's hard for me right now to wipe the smile off my face. I'm enjoying this so much. Greg and I just hooked up a second subwoofer to my system, and it sounds phenomenal. Just a little back history. Greg recommended I get a subwoofer, the first subwoofer, maybe a couple years ago, which added a huge impact to my system. And he recommended getting a second subwoofer, and the second one impacted it just about as much as adding the first one. The space is tremendous. You just hear things way out wide, and I'm just thrilled with it. I couldn't be happier. I would recommend doing it. If you have any questions at all, do it.
So why stereo subwoofers instead of just one? Well, quite simply, most analog stereo recordings post the early 1960s, and all digital ones, contain stereo bass information. Now first, when you attempt to sum deep bass into a mono signal and recreate it with only one single subwoofer, all of the out-of-phase information between the two channels will be canceled, vastly reducing the amplitude and power of those notes. Now, let's suppose you select to use a single sub and that your room setup dictates its placement to the left side outside the location of your left main speaker. Now, even though frequency directionality is less noticeable below about 40 Hz, when your system creates a kick drum or timpani, a bassoon, an upright bass or bass guitar, even the lowest registers from a piano, that were recorded on the right side of the soundstage, the contributions from that single sub placed to the far left can significantly skew that rightmost presentation, presenting a remarkably distracting psychoacoustic effect. For me, the most compelling reason to use stereo subwoofers is their ability to recreate a significantly more authentic sense of the fullness, detail, and immediacy of the space and acoustic ambience of the room, hall, or venue that is captured and recreated with good recordings. The difference you will note in this regard will more than justify your decision to go stereo, and will explain just why Randy had such an enormous smile on his face while he described his enhanced experience after implementing this solution in his own space. Now, it's our collective hope that our sharing of Randy's journey will provide some of you with the encouragement and knowledge you may have been searching for to take this exciting step to enhance your system. As always, thanks for taking the time to drop by. Further information on supporting the channel may be found in today's description section or at my website, theaudioanalyst.com. Please stay safe and keep the music playing. Till next time, cheers.